Superintendent Glover here, Super Talk. This is our Juneteenth Celebration Edition, and let's get it, let's go. Dr. Livingston, let's transition a little bit as we continue to talk about the importance of Juneteenth. And I want to bring in a space that I know is special to you. You've written about it. Your dissertation many, many years ago was on this area. Let's talk about Juneteenth and hip hop.
Okay.
All right. Let's
Absolutely.
talk about Juneteenth and hip hop. Talk to us about the role that hip hop, the not just the music, but the culture of hip hop plays in this space of resistance, which is, what Juneteenth is about. Talk to us about it.
Oh man, it's funny that you mentioned that, because that's one of the areas I did not really prepare for. But so now I'm like, oh wow. But it's kind of, it lives with me. There's a playlist that I have on, I won't mention the streaming service, but it's called Juneteenth Rises in the East. And it's a play on the importance of Juneteenth, and it's framed by your boy J. Rue the Damage's album, The Sun Rises in the East. So basically I just have music in there that echoes that theme of returning to a sense of a larger sense of who we are, when we were actually in communication and conversation with global communities on a status of not just as equals, but as innovators in terms of civilization. I see hip hop as a part of that long tradition of African meaning making and memory keeping and storytelling. And to me, it's not a surprise that hip hop has taken off, and you hear Palestinian hip hop groups, DAM, and that's actually the name of the group. And it's funny, you mentioned the cultural autobiography assignment. One of the songs that I play for students along with the readings by Du Bois and other folks, Zora Neale Hurston, is Kendrick Lamar's DNA. And, that notion of what is it that's in our DNA? What gives us our strength? So hip hop is a valuable part of that. To some extent, actually, I stepped away from doing a lot of hip hop scholarship after I finished the dissertation. And I don't know, I think I was kind of seeing a different direction and a different celebration of hip hop. And I also saw some scholars, I won't call them scholar activists necessarily, who were having conversations about hip hop that really weren't necessarily getting at the root of the problem in terms of the potential of hip hop. I've really just gone back to kind of like teaching my hip hop class at Morehouse. It's called The Black Aesthetic of Hip Hop Culture. And at first I was like, man, this is another prep. I got 3 preps, 3 classes, but I really enjoyed it, of course. And I knew I would, because that's a part of my heart. That's a part of, what gave me the passion to be a scholar in the first place. As you know, some of those conversations we had at University of South Carolina and at Temple about the potential of hip hop culture. Well, hip hop, like we said, it's grown. It's all over the place. It's taken different forms. In South Africa, there's a form of hip hop called Kwaito, and it was a huge thing in the early 2000s. Still there to some extent. And one of the jobs that I see as a part of what I do with my students is to unpack what are those global forms of hip hop. So what does Afro-Brazilian hip hop look like? What does hip hop look like in Brazil? What does hip hop look like in Germany? And to center the question, is this still true to this question of Black identity? Because, one of the ways that I frame the beginnings of hip hop, and this is not just me, but my OGs, Ron Stevens, people like Robert Ferris Thompson and other folks like that, cultural historians, is to understand that hip hop was really in some ways developed to address the peace situation in New York and in the Northeast, but then also to identify ways of affirming Black identity that were resonant with what was happening in the 1960s. So, we talk about sampling James Brown and sampling Black soul music from the 60s and Black jazz, but we don't understand why. We don't talk about, well, why would they do that? They're doing that because they're trying to circle the square. They're trying to reconnect their young audience with a sense of who they are. And you didn't just have to be a 5% a member of the Nation of Gods and Earths in order to do that. Lots of different groups are doing it and continue to do it. Just got to shout out, Kendrick still is my boy. Who's in my top 5, but I also got to mention some folks like Coast Contra, a group that's based in LA, Philly rappers, brothers from I want to say Costa Rica, and folks from LA as well. But those brothers are bad, man. I mean, there's a lot of folks out there. I was just adding music to the Juneteenth Rises in the East playlist, and I got to mention Cyrock, her album, The Sharecropper's Daughter. If you don't know it, it's old. It's a 4-year-old album, but it's rings so true today. Cyrock, Saroc, along with my sister Star, and just great musicians. And I got to shout out the Black women in hip hop, especially the conscious sisters really building on that conscious hip hop tradition. So it's still relevant, man.
So you see how your passion came out. I know you don't have to be prepped when it comes to something that's passionate and is a part of who you are. But I want to just say, I don't know if the audience saw what you just did, right? You prepped us a little while ago about talking about lengthening our memory, right? And you just took us to school about how hip hop has lengthened our memory, right? And taking us to why it was important to sample the artists of the 60s and the artists of the 30s and 40s, right? And you just told us they continue to live on. Like, I'm always enamored when I see young kids grooving to sounds and artists that they've never heard, that have passed and gone, right? But that's lengthened our memory in that space. But then when you start unpacking it, right? You unpacking, well, James Brown was telling a story.
Mm-hmm.
Now, the James Brown, the man, and James Brown, the musician. Sometimes it's hard to separate the two, but he had a message in his piece, in his work, right? So I think it's important that we understand that music helps to lengthen our memory. I recently had opportunity to go to Nashville, Tennessee, and I don't know if you've ever been. I went to the African American Museum, Music Museum in Nashville, Tennessee.
I've never been.
Oh my gracious! Oh my brother! I went in there thinking I was going to be in there about 45 minutes, an hour. I spent 3.5 hours in there.
Wow!
And it just took me on a history lesson of unpacking our great artists, right? And taking us to all these genres. But it took us to the Deep South in the slave era. But even before, it took us back to the nation, to the Congo, to the motherland, to South Africa. And I'm sitting there like, oh my gracious. This is an art that we didn't know about in our class, right?
Yeah.
So that alone, right? Because music, Nashville is Music City. Everybody talks about but you have to just go and just put the headphones on and just start writing. I mean, you as a scholar, as a historian, and then as a brother who loves music, brother, I guarantee you'll be in there for hours just learning and then probably writing about it. So, that's what's important to me, right? When I think about the responsibility of us as educators, talking about what is the purpose of schooling, what you just did is why school's important, because we don't get this in the day-to-day classroom. And some of that's our fault, right? Having our kids understand the importance of knowing themselves in relationship to the larger global society is so essential, good brother.
Absolutely.
So essential.
Absolutely. And, like I said, I know it's old news, but man, when Black Panther came out in, I guess it was 2018. I'm pretty sure it was 2018. I was like, what? They're the central artist who plays like the voice of the ancestors. So when you hear the Wakanda theme song, you hear that very high, kind of like a high nasally. That's my boy Baba Maal. That's the Senegalese Fulani artist Baba Maal, who is internationally known. And I was rocking with Baba Maal, kind of like late into my temple years, but like I say, Baba Maal helped me survive Los Angeles in many ways. I know black folks in Los Angeles be like, what the hell are you talking about? But just the spirit of his music. And, it was like only 1 or 2 albums, but that I had. But when I heard him being his voice on that Black Panther soundtrack, so prominent and so central, it gave me, it really encouraged me. And it kind of reminded me of why I got it started with hip hop in the first place. And I'm trying to be quick. I know I don't talk very fast, but I take a long time to say stuff. My bad. Son of preacher, son of preachers. Let's put it like that. So just real quick, the cipher of hip hop connects with the circle of the ring shout and the Gullah Geechee culture. The Gullah Geechee culture was the circle for integrating Congolese people, Senegalese people, Sierra Leoneans, Ashanti folks, Yoruba, all these people in the ring shout being integrated. And when we understand African history for our students, I tell them, if you really understand an important counterclockwise circle from the Great Lakes region in East Africa, up or down the Nile Valley, across the Sahara to Lake Chad and then to West Africa, and then the Bantu people coming out of Cameroon and going back into that area. Remember those three counterclockwise circles. Most hip hop ciphers take place, as far as I've seen, in that counterclockwise circle. The ring shout is a counterclockwise circle, and that African migration pattern is, for the most part, a counterclockwise circle. And of course, with any broad generalization, there's always ways of finding exceptions, but generally it is true. So if we understand that, Black folks have been moving and creating culture in these large scale counterclockwise circles. And of course, the ring shout actually represents and commemorates one of the most important counterclockwise circles. That's the movement of the earth around the sun. And from our perspective, it looks like the sun is moving, of course, from the east, facing north, that's our right hand, counterclockwise to the west, and then rising again. So those counterclockwise circles are important. Hip hop, this is something that, it's like, oh, dude, you talking spooky. No, it's just some ways that we can actually help our students summarize and understand big periods of time. And one of those is by looking at culture from the perspective of how Black folks move in these counterclockwise circles across time, even locally. Very, very important. I was watching a video. It showed some, I want to say this is like Nashville hip hop dance. It was on YouTube. And I was like, I'll be damned. They're moving in a counterclockwise circle. Kids dancing in a counterclockwise circle. No knowledge of the ring shout, but some things are a part of our cultural DNA, are a part of our cultural memory. Hip hop keeps that alive. Hip hop keeps that alive. That's why I will never give up on hip hop as much, even though I might not like 9 of the 10 artists. I'll always find something that I can groove with or rock with. And shout out to folks like Lil Baby, who I think is trying to find his voice. Kendrick has always been doing his thing. J. Cole is still out there. I won't mention artists that I don't rock with, so I don't be looked at as a hater or anything like that.
but you understand, brother. But this is so I sit in this space of education, right? I'm finishing my 33rd, 34th year in this space, right?
Yes, sir.
And I think about, I've had to grow my understanding of hip hop because I want to see what our kids are what the message they're gleaming from it, right? Mm-hmm. And I'm gonna be honest, because it took my daughter to help me sit down and listen to an artist who I at first was like, yo, I don't know what he's talking about. And then when I started listening, I started saying, oh, wow, this brother's actually heavy. Mm-hmm. And he's speaking similarly the way folks in our age bracket spoke when we were coming and gravitating to hip hop. Mm-hmm. And I know we're missing something in the school systems globally, right here in the United States, where we don't connect hip hop and music and art into our daily curricular resources. Yeah, we're missing something.
Yeah.
So let's kind of bring it to a wrap up on this topic right here. Talk to me about the future of the future priorities that our educational system should have. And if you could take me, and I know you're a higher ed person, but if you could take me through that middle school, even elementary school years to where we get to higher ed, what should be some of our priorities? And I know you like to do in 3s or 4s. So if you got 2, 3 priorities, talk to us about what you think our priorities should be.
Yeah. And I know it sounds like I'm just repeating myself, but I can't overstate the importance of centering our students in the educational process. So centering them, make sure that they know that they and their families and their communities are of great importance. And it used to be, Rod, I don't know if you remember back in the 80s when we were talking about this whole multicultural debate. It was like, well, how are you going to spend time with all the different cultures, the Asians and this and that? And instead of looking at it as a competition for resources and limited time, you could look at that as an embarrassment of riches. But that means that we have to change our perspective and understand that education should be like the ancient Egyptian term, sekepera. Their term for education is the term sekepera, which means to cause a transformation. And that is a transformation of our students as they move from being relatively individualized, localized, to being global, powerful, and people who can make connections and understand the connections between different systems. They can understand healthcare and how that intersects with technology, and how that intersects with political economy and exploitation of African resources and global resources. All of these things are connected. So facilitating that ability to make connections is really important. So center the students, empower them to be global connectors. They are global connectors. And, I always say, I tell my students, I want you to become an expert in what you see as important. And you use Africana studies as a tool to get there. You use the Africana studies as a tool to become an expert in understanding those connections. So I think definitely those are important. Always be on the quest for new knowledge and new information. Going back to Juneteenth, just real quick, got to just say that the struggle for Black freedom during slavery reached a high point, not in 1860 or 1861, when the Confederates fired on Fort Sumter or whatever, but from 1846 to 1856. And if you look, and this is, again, my OG, I call it my OG, Vincent Harding, in his book, There's a River. I started doing research when I moved out to San Diego. I took my first full-time position at San Diego State. And I found this quote that affirmed the research that I was doing on a man named Reverend Moses Dixon. And the second book project I'm working on actually centers his life, Reverend Moses Dixon. Well, anyway, 1856, Reverend Moses Dixon, he writes that he was planning the biggest slave rebellion in American history, because his rebellion would have included between 50 to 150,000 Black men and women. And not just Black men and women, but their allies as well, who were going to convene on Christmas Day, 1856. So what Vincent Harding writes, and I won't give you the quote, I know we don't have time, but basically summarizing it, he basically says that the Black foment for freedom reached a high point in 1856. Now, he mentions only Moses Dixon, but Moses Dixon is what I tell my students you have to be on the lookout for. That is the Black hidden figure. The Black hidden figure who's actually moving things behind the scenes. And you should not just look for that in the history books, but you need to be that, become that in your daily life. You have to be the change agent, especially when you're not in front of the camera. Because, I think at Morehouse, there's we produce leaders. Yeah, true, we do. But the most important type of leader is a Moses Dixon, Reverend Moses Dixon, who most people have never even heard about, but actually was driving this Black freedom struggle. And he did it not by dictating, he did it by being in conversation with Black people. So becoming that hidden change agent, I think, is the most important thing. So again, center Black students, transform them to be global connectors and analysts of these global systems, and then center them and focus on their internalizing the ethos of becoming hidden change agents in the world toward justice, not just toward self-aggrandizement or personal enrichment. And there's so many examples that we can look to, from Anna Julia Cooper to Reverend Moses Dixon, to, oh my goodness, there's so many people that we can look to, and, challenge our students to find somebody new. Don't always just go to Frederick Douglass and Du Bois, and,
yeah,
there's so many other people.
That's why it was so important. And as beautiful as the AP African American History course is, it's also, I'm like, this is kind of late. Like, we got to get this down into the classroom space in the elementary grades, right? And we can give a little bit. We can feed a little bit every year. And as their abilities to comprehend this grows, we can feed them more. So by the time they get to 12th grade, they're right in the course, right? Because the access to information is so much more readily available compared to when you and I sat in the classroom as seniors in high school. And we can begin to have them really understand what their expertise is, or they want it to be, when they're younger, because they have such a global access to so much more global information than we did. Brother, listen, man, we about 45 minutes in, and I know you and I could kick and vibe for another 45 easily. The audience's attention span may not be there, but I want to remind everybody, I said we were going to go to school today. The content today was about understanding Juneteenth, right? Because like every other holiday, there's a commercialization of Juneteenth. So we're all going to rock our shirts. We're going to put up our flags, and everybody's going to, and then you're going to start asking our students, what's Juneteenth? What is it really about? And so who do we understand that best from? And I needed to have a scholar to come on. I happen to be good friends with this scholar, but I also know as he was dropping names, you should see me. I got notes. A friend of mine said, Glover, you do these podcasts and sometimes you have notes, sometimes you don't. I'm like you. Today I knew I was going to school, and you took us all to school. And I have a colleague that I'm about to call Reverend Moses Dixon on Monday, on tomorrow, because they are doing things behind the scenes, and we don't know a lot of times, right?
Yeah.
I'm going to use these, man. I'm going to make these, if you don't mind, I'm going to use these as a blueprint for just getting conversations with some of my great educators I have in our district, centering our students, making those global connections, making sure they become an expert in what they wanted, something they want to be, right? This quest for new knowledge and understanding that they have to be change agents towards justice or towards a cause, and make sure their voice stands out. And brother, I don't know how you share your Juneteenth Rises in the East. I can only imagine what's on that playlist. Knowing you, man, that's a powerful title. You just hit me over the head today with so much. I need a drink of water. You got me. I'm thirsty for more, but I need a little thirst. You got me out here sweating like, God, I forgot about this. Yo, Dean Hereford would be proud of you, my brother.
Oh man, I think about Dean every day, man, and think about his class and how transformative that campus was, which actually was one of the first unofficial HBCUs. Because Black folks took it over. I say that all the time.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. We took it over, so that's why they streamlined. They got rid of so many of us. But Brother Rod, if I could just take 1 minute just to mention,
and yeah, definitely.
I'll say 4 African educators who will actually help us to do what we were just talking about, lengthen our line, but then also look at some of the biggest human rights challenges. And I got to mention my brother, Dr. Kennedy Kihangi Bindu. Kennedy was a scholar, but like a scholar at a school in Goma. Dr. Kennedy Kihangi Bindu, last name Bindu. The brother was so bad, he created this center called the Center for Research in Democracy and Development in Africa. He's known all throughout East Africa and South Africa. And the president of the Congo basically said, now you got to help us to actually be a part of the government. So he appointed him the mayor of the city of Goma. Kennedy, I don't think he had political experience before that, but he was basically thrown into a maelstrom. And you have the M23 rebels surrounding that city. He has to find a way of providing peace and security in some ways. So this is a professor. And I just say, look out for this brother, say a prayer for him, but not just that, as you can support Friends of the Congo. We're trying to line up as much support for the people of Goma and the entire country of the Democratic Republic of Congo, which, as we said earlier, is the fulcrum around which, in many ways, African history turns. And that's not to center and say that their lives are more important than others, but literally, Malcolm said it. Malcolm said, you can't understand Mississippi unless you understand the Congo. Frantz Fanon said it. He said that Africa is shaped like a gun and the trigger is the Congo. And of course, Kwame Nkrumah talked about the challenge of the Congo, and Patrice Lumumba, the importance of the Congo. But so think of our brothers and sisters who are working, trying to do what we're doing today, but dealing with the situation of rebels surrounding them. And these are rebels paid by ultimately the United States, but it's through the country of Rwanda. And unfortunately, and it's not all Rwandan people. Rwandan people are some of the most beautiful, warm people that you have ever met. I love the country of Rwanda. The leader, not so much, because he's basically just fomenting civil war within the African community, especially in the Great Lakes region. But we should also just remember those ancient scholars too. And I got to mention one, Pharaoh Amos. Pharaoh Amos, Ahmose, is the first example of what we call a scholar activist. So we have Dr. Kennedy Bendu, who's working today as a scholar activist, the first scholar activist you can find before Plato, before Socrates, before Aristotle, before Thales and Pythagoras, who were the first two European philosophers. But over 1,000 years before them, you have Amos, who spells out what it means to be a scholar activist. And if we actually go back and read the works of people like Dr. Theophilo Benga, Sheikh Anta Diop, our teachers, Dr. Malefi Asante, and Greg Carr out there today doing his thing, Mario Beatty, Valethia Watkins, all these great scholars who are doing work out here, and like yourself, who is so important because you weren't just satisfied with knowing this information, but you set about doing the work of creating structures that would empower children. And I hope that your community really appreciates you, man, because we definitely do. And we need more educational leaders like you. So I really appreciate the opportunity to be here, man. And Juneteenth is a great time to
my brother.
There's a lot more. There's a whole Juneteenth presentation that I did, and it does some of the Gullah Geechee stuff. It connects back to some African economic stuff, but there's that we don't have time for it right now. And I think I don't want to just throw it out there. I'm just going to say that Juneteenth it was just Galveston's holiday in 1865. Then it became Texas's holiday. Then it became the Midwest holiday. But now it is all Black people's holiday. And that's global. That's global. You'll see that Juneteenth flag, which looks a lot like the Haitian flag, I always say.
It does, right.
Yes, and I appreciate that. I definitely appreciate that. Hey, so let me be quiet. Let me shut up.
No, but Brother Sam, here's the thing. Where do we have, and I know I'm going to bounce back into this real quickly, but where do we have the curricular resources that we can introduce into the classroom so we can give the true story of Juneteenth, right? Because you just closed by saying like you have this presentation, right? And I'm very leery, and I love, even when I go into my Black, as we support Black-owned bookstores, beautiful one in DC. But if we go into Black-owned bookstores and we go into our cultural centers, I'm very leery of just taking something off the shelf. Where can we get our hands on some good quality material that we can introduce into the classroom space? We can adjust it to fit the needs of our elementary, middle, and high school students so that they can truly understand. And I think we can lengthen the memory of what Juneteenth is really about. And you maybe you're working on it. I don't know. But I would love to be able to say, where can we get that, brother?
So right off the bat, my apologies for not having a list right here, but I can definitely help and provide like a list for your audience. But I would say going back to some of the classics actually helps us to understand why Juneteenth is so important, and actually does the purposes of what we talked about, lengthening our line, lengthening our memory. And I've mentioned the book, but I'll say it again. There's a River by Dr. Vincent Harding. definitely that piece is a critically important piece. The African American Experience by Joe William Trotter. That's another one. That's really good. Just in terms of the history of Juneteenth itself. Ah, man, I'm sorry. I should have been prepared. I should have actually had a ready piece. But I would emphasize that there are primary sources. So one of the pieces that I refer to as I talk about in deal with Juneteenth is Clint Smith's How the Word is Passed. So this is a book that was written, I want to say is around 2020, by Clint Smith, How the Word is Passed. But he talks about the importance of Juneteenth and understanding Juneteenth as a part of a knowledge network that Black folks had created. And he says that the people, in addition to that, you can find also primary sources, newspapers that are online going back to 1865. So June 19th, 1865. I have a piece here. You can find this in New York Times, the New Orleans papers, local papers. But what I thought was really interesting was Clint Smith's piece, where he talks about the importance of Juneteenth. He says the people of Texas are informed that in accordance, and of course, it's just reading the proclamation that was given on that day, General Field Order Number 3. The people of Texas are informed that in accordance with the proclamation from the executive of the United States, all slaves, enslaved Africans, we say, are free. This involves an absolute equality of personal rights and rights of property. Now, I won't read the rest of the quote, but what I will say is if you read books like There's a River and then Clint Smith's, which is much more recent, How the Word is Passed, it helps us to understand that history is not just like a static version of things. It's actually a process, and it's a process that needs to be reaffirmed by more and more people and by folks who tend to be excluded from that history writing process. So I really like that book, How the Word is Passed, because again, because of that whole notion there, that we wouldn't have been free or gotten our freedom if it wasn't for these knowledge networks. And then if we step back a little bit and include the Haitian Revolution, I would say Julius S. Scott. And I know it's not exactly Juneteenth, but there's no Black freedom struggle in America without the Haitian Revolution.
Well, the Haitian Revolution, exactly. Point blank. Exactly.
But what Julius Scott shows is that, and I know I got that book right over here, The Common Wind. He shows that African Americans are actually African Americans, people from Martinique. I'm going to be visiting there soon. We're actually trying to set up a study abroad in Martinique and Guadeloupe. But Haiti benefited from these networks, these knowledge networks that Black folks participated in, even if you weren't Haitian. There were Jamaicans who supported the Haitian Revolution. There were folks from Martinique. There were people from Louisiana. For that matter, Juneteenth is a perfect opportunity to reflect on the fact that our single biggest slave rebellion, the one that took place. Now, Moses Dixon was planned. It didn't actually take place, but the one that took place was led by a man named Charles Deslandes. Charles Deslandes, Deslandes, a Haitian man. So, for folks who say that our history is just the history of people who were here in 1865, you don't know what you're talking about. You're cutting off too many connections. And these connections are a part of our history. Charles Deslandes led his rebellion in 1811. Only 7 years after the Haitian Revolution, he had been sold to America. And he says, okay, I got something for y'all. He organizes the biggest actual rebellion in American history was led by a Haitian American man. So those connections, man, I think are just really, really important. And
we're going to do our homework.
Like I said, it went from Galveston to Texas to the Midwest. Today it's national, it's international. And what we can do is to commit ourselves to learning about other freedom struggles and understanding how those are connected or not, or just how other folks try to get down for their freedom as well.
This is why, I always say the purpose of schooling, right? In today's society, the understanding of the connections. I think too often we try to deliver educational content in isolation of a much more global and broader understanding of how I fit into this space.
Mm.
And you made it important. You said it best, man. We have to make sure that our students are at the center of this work, and they have to become experts in a space, and then just go heavy, go hard in understanding how that relates to their identity. Dr. Sam T. Livingston, a brother from Georgetown, South Carolina, who has traveled this country and this world and has continued to school us and drop knowledge. Brother, I want any closing words you want to share with us. I like to always make sure that our guests get opportunity to drop another nugget, although I don't know how much more you can hit us with before we need to take a break, because you've been hitting us with it today, brother. You've been hitting us with some good information.
Definitely appreciate that.
Take us home. Take us home.
Oh, man. Just to say, and I'm glad I kind of framed up, I want to have Malcolm in the frame there. We were listening to this in our dorms, the message to the grassroots.
Oh, my gracious.
Malcolm's. Oh, man. So I would just say, like Malcolm said, of all our studies, history is best qualified to reward all research. And that regardless of what discipline you're studying or what your profession is, you can always make yourself better and of more use by studying history, not just for yourself or African-American history, but studying global history so that you understand how our lives are a part of this intricate web. Like Dr. King talked about, the inescapable web of mutuality, intermutuality. We're all tied together. And that is definitely true. We can't let these crazy fascist folks, these MAGA folks or whatever, tell us that, come on and join this movement and create a wall around America. Dude, first of all, it's not going to work. Second of all, is counterintuitive and is not going to be beneficial to anybody, really, except for a few white people who want to feel good in the idea of them being the majority of the country for a few more years. And we got to say a few more years. That's it, because their time as a majority is up. But if we study history, we actually see that you don't have to have a majority to still rule over people. So the study of history is vitally important for our survival. I say that as African people, as the descendant of Gullah Geechee people, that history has to be sacred to us, and we can't make it optional. For your students, make sure your students go to school so that they actually bring new knowledge home to you, so that they bring new knowledge home to the community, to the family. And, I won't go on, because I got a whole other line of things that we could talk about, but I'm not going to do that. I'm just going to say that continue to lengthen that line, center our students, empower them to be the change agents, and make sure that they're in conversation with some elders, man. And, I think that's the critical thing. That's the important piece.
You are, I first and foremost say I appreciate you, my brother. I appreciate the work you're doing and continuing to enlighten us. I think you are definitely one of those folks who probably behind the scenes is doing things that we don't even know about when we're sleeping. I wanted to get into, for those that don't know, you were on the national news. We won't go deep into, we would just say that you stood up and showed out for the Congo folks doing a recent speech by the President of the United States. So for those that don't know what I'm talking about, go back and look at the Morehouse commencement speech given by President Biden, and you're going to see this scholar's face in the place, really front and center. And I'll leave it at that as a little teaser for people to go and see what the meaning is. Brother, you're a friend, you're a brother. I appreciate you for taking time out of your day. I know this is your summer season and you get a chance to rest before you get back into the grind of being a professor on the great Morehouse College. But thank you. I salute you.
Thank you, Brother Ride. Man, I appreciate you. You don't know, the people that we touch as higher ed professors, we count in the hundreds. The people that you educate, you count in the thousands, if not tens of thousands. So, wow. Brother, you're doing it, and we need more educated, more educational leaders like you. Man, if I can support anything that y'all are doing, just let me know, and I'm there. I'm there.
You know what? we do these tours all the time, right? And I'm gonna just say this. I know we keep saying this is why I say these conversations go longer. We do these tours where we bring students from, to visit colleges and everything. But I think we're missing something recently. I think we on and we're off. I need to make sure I bring students to really understand, like, this is knowledge, right? When I take you here, I want you to really fully understand what you get in a Morehouse education, a Spelman education, et cetera. So I might be leaning on you, brother, and saying, you know what? I got some heavy hitters here. Oh, I got some heavy hitters here. I would love to get them in front of you, in front of some of your students. So we might be planning a trip down to the ATL and let you just kind of take us to school a little bit, like we used to do in front of the knowledge tree at the University of South Carolina. So we might let you do that. So we're gonna stay connected. We always chat anyway, but we're going to stay connected, and I'm going to definitely bring some of my young people down here so they can really see and experience what it means to be a true learner, right? A constant learner. So
Gladly.
Thank you, my brother.
Man, thank you, Brother Rod. Thank you and your audience.
Love.
Thank your community and just your whole family, man. Appreciate you, brother.
We definitely. Hillside, stand up. This is Superintendent Glover closing out another episode of Super Talk. I told you we was going to school today, people, and we surely did. The great Dr. Samuel T. Livingston, Morehouse College, esteemed professor there. If you haven't heard about him, please check him out. He's written many articles, but he's more than just one who's sitting behind the desk. He's actually doing the work. So you check his bio, you'll be able to see it. Today, I want him to chop it up with us about Juneteenth and its importance. We have so much more we could talk about, but I want you to just take a little bit of our nuggets today. We're going to break this up into 2 segments so that you got time to digest it and truly understand what he's trying to talk about and talk to you today. Hillside, stand up. Let's get it. Let's go. Superintendent Glover signing off.
Thank you, brother. Appreciate you.
Stay on for a second, good brother.